Alright, listen up. But Giannis and the Bucks are in the middle of one of the most bewildering stretches we've seen in a long time. I don't say that lightly. This whole narrative has been simmering since last season's early exits. And every time you think it settles down, something else pops up to make it messier. Start with the basics. The fit with Damian Lillard never panned out the way everyone expected. He tore his Achilles in that playoff series, he's out for the season, and you have to wonder what the chemistry would have even looked like if he had been healthy. The Bucks tried to pivot this summer. They explored a Giannis to New York conversation. They waived and stretched Lillard in a move nobody saw coming, and they signed Miles Turner away from the Pacers to try and shore up things inside. Credit to them for swinging. At least they were trying things, but the results on the court have been underwhelming. At the moment, they're 17-24, hovering around the play-in line and playing some of their most inconsistent basketball. Giannis missed 14 games this year, and in the 27 games he did play, the Bucks were only 14-13. That's barely over 500 dealers. And if you extrapolate that win rate, they'd still be in the back half of the play-in situation, even with Giannis playing like one of the top 3 players in the world. The team has been 22nd in offense and 20th in defense in those games, with a net rating of 1.1. Those aren't numbers that scream contender, they're the numbers of a team that's stuck. This past stretch of games was rough to watch. They went 1-4 against some decent teams. They got throttled by the Spurs in a game where they were down by as much as 39, got routed by the Timberwolves even without Anthony Edwards, and lost to the Nuggets and Warriors in matchups where those opponents weren't always at full strength. They did beat the Lakers, which is a big win, but overall this feels like a team that's slipping rather than one on the rise. One moment from the Wolves game feels particularly revealing. Giannis gets an and one and he actually boos back at the crowd after they boo him. You rarely see that side of him. He's typically composed, a quiet leader who lets his play do the talking. After the game, he pushed back when asked about fans criticizing him.
Count the bucket.
Reminding people he's been here 13 years, that he's led the franchise in a lot of categories, and that no one has a right to tell him how to play. It felt like a small heel turn. Not dramatic, but significant because it highlighted mounting frustration. Fans are frustrated. The team is frustrating. And Giannis clearly feels it. Then there's the coaching and the roster beyond him. Doc Rivers' comments about other teams dealing with injuries, where he threw out examples like the Nuggets and Thunder, didn't land well. Those teams have navigated their issues and largely stayed afloat. Rivers' point was that other teams are dealing with difficulties too. But the Bucks' losses, especially the blowouts to teams missing key players, suggest this roster has deeper issues than just health. It's not just about missing Giannis for a stretch. Even when he's on the floor, the supporting cast and the defense have underperformed. To me, Rivers hasn't inspired a ton of confidence as a coach in this context, and the roster construction leaves a lot to be desired. That combination, a superstar who wants to win, but a roster that can't realistically compete right now, naturally leads to one boiling question: trade risk. Is Giannis going to be traded? There are a few dynamics at play. On one hand, Giannis spoke to Sam Amick and reiterated he's locked in and has no intention of demanding a trade. He said he wouldn't put the franchise in that position, but then he added, as of today, when asked if he definitively didn't want to be in Milwaukee. That kind of phrasing is a classic hedge. And for people who follow athlete interviews closely, that second qualifier is the line that keeps the rumor mill alive. Reports have surfaced that there are deals at least in play, maybe even close to being done, but that things are basically on pause because teams aren't sure whether Giannis will remain with the Bucks through the trade deadline. Some teams are still hoping. I get why moving a player of Giannis's caliber would transform a franchise, but think about the logistics. We're within weeks of the trade deadline. Assembling a package that makes sense and getting a star to waive or sign off on a move in that window is an enormous task. My gut says a mid-season trade is unlikely. It feels more probable that whatever conversations are happening now continue to simmer into the summer. Still, you can sketch out scenarios for both outcomes. If Giannis stays, the Bucks have to decide whether to keep trying to patch the roster with modest moves or to risk mortgaging the future in a desperate attempt to assemble a contender around him. That's where the real pain point is. Their asset picture is bare. Reports suggest the only meaningful things left are a 2031 pick swap and a 2032 first-round pick. That's pretty thin. You can keep flipping short-term rentals and hope a shooter heats up and the defense gets fixed. But without real draft capital and flexibility, you're hamstrung. If the Bucks decide to try to upgrade before the deadline, they have to be extremely careful. They can't afford to give up promising young pieces or years of draft picks to chase a midseason band-aid. Look around at names that have come up in speculation. Ja Morant gets floated, Zach LaVine would be pricey contractually and wouldn't solve defensive issues, and Andrew Wiggins has been mentioned as a cheaper, role player type target who might make sense if he could be acquired without mortgage level assets. But none of those moves change the structural problems: the lack of depth, limited future picks, and defensive inconsistencies. There's no easy trade out there that makes the Bucks title contenders overnight. This is what makes the decision so agonizing for Milwaukee. If they trade Giannis while his value is high, they could accelerate a rebuild and gather a haul of young players and picks. That's the franchise control long-term view. But trading a generational player who's expressed that he loves Milwaukee and hasn't demanded a move carries huge risk on the fan base and the brand. It's also a moral question. Do you move your all-time great because you're scared you can't build around him? Or do you keep trying to find the right blend of pieces and hope the coaching answers and a tweak here or there lead to results?
Not playing together. Our chemistry's not there. Guys are being selfish.
The front office has been aggressive before. Drew Holiday was a swing that worked and got them a title. But those swings can also fail, and Lillard didn't pan out and cost them resources. I can hear the reactions already. People saying, I want Giannis gone, or that I'm anti-Bucks. That's not the case. I love this kind of storyline where a superstar stays loyal and the small market team fights back to the top. That would be a beautiful narrative. But right now, the cold reality is the Bucks' position makes that narrative harder to believe. The Eastern Conference has been soft in places, but it's getting stronger. If Milwaukee can't get significantly better with the assets they have, or if they continue to underperform, Giannis might realistically start weighing his long-term competitiveness. The longer the will he, won't he conversation drags out, the more it bleeds into the franchise's ability to plan. My read? I don't think a Giannis trade happens before the deadline. It feels too sudden and messy to pull off in a few weeks. I do think we're moving toward a defining summer though. If the Bucks limp to the end, miss the playoffs, or get bounced quickly, the pressure will mount. The ideal time to act from an asset maximizing perspective is when his value is still sky high. But that's also exactly the spot Milwaukee has the toughest decision. They either double down and hope or pivot and rebuild. And there's a human element here that sometimes gets lost in the trade chatter. Giannis is an elite player, but he's also invested in his legacy, in his family, and in what it means to be the face of a franchise for over a decade. He's expressed love for Milwaukee and a desire not to be the kind of player who forces his way out. That matters. It means this may ultimately be less transactional and more about relationships and timing than it is about spreadsheets and picks. Quick thoughts on tonight's slate. The Rockets got a solid win over the Wolves. Kevin Durant was massive, and Alperen Şengün had a strong showing. The Cavs beat the Sixers with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley impacting the finish, while Philly's execution late looked sloppy. The Clippers took an overtime win against Toronto with James Harden dominating down the stretch. The Kings blew out the Wizards with good contributions across the board. The Pacers handled the Pelicans thanks to role players stepping up, and the Nuggets edged the Bulls on a late Michael Porter Jr. bucket. Nothing earth-shattering, but a lot of games that matter for seeding and momentum. So, where do you land on the Giannis question? Is he staying, or is this the season that finally ends the Bucks era? Do you want him to be traded? If he does get moved, where makes the most sense? Drop your take. I want to hear them. If you like this breakdown, hit like and subscribe, and let me know which angle you want me to dig into next. Thanks for listening.